Hello cellists. We are in week 11 on the fourth lesson of the week. Good complete change of the weather here today in England, about 10-degree drop. Anyway, we're on to the final lesson of the middle movement of Brahms' E minor sonata, and we're also covering a few more ideas on Feuillard study number 34. But to begin, as ever, we're going to look at technicals, and it's always a good idea to change what those technicals might be. You may have some standard warm-ups and then ones that are perhaps specific to the piece. So, thinking of that specificity, I think it would be a good idea to do C sharp major. Now, normally when it's presented to you in your first schooling books and your scale books, it'll be presented as D flat major, which only has 5 flats in it. And as soon as you get to all 6 sharps or 6 flats, which means F sharp major or G flat major, we switch over. But in actual fact, composers aren't restricted by the circle of fifths being convenient up to 6. And so we can and need to be able to think beyond that. So obviously C sharp major is going to have 7 sharps in it. Every single note is sharpened. And although your fingers will be doing the same thing as if you're doing D flat major and thinking D flat major, so I mean you could cheat about this and play D flat major and say that you're thinking C sharp, but you do need to think about C sharp major. So really imagine it, and it's very surprising how you have a different perspective of that. So reminding again, we've got the stretch 2 solution. At this point, don't forget you're on an A sharp at this point. We're going to move back a displaced semitone to B sharp. At this point we're going to be using closed 2 for a couple of groups. Back to here on A sharp. And the reason? Well, the reason is the trio part of this Brahms sonata is an F sharp minor, and that the dominant to F sharp minor is C sharp major. And Brahms is using C sharp major, and we should become accustomed to thinking like that and feeling those shapes, so that, for example, when you come to bar 98, there's a tiny bit of really a C sharp minor kind of picture in there, and then C sharp major, you know, with a ninth suspension at the top. Pianists do this all the time. They're very, very familiar with looking at chords which may have the same hand shape and have a different description, an enharmonic description. And we need to be as equally versatile, even if you feel slightly out of your comfort zone. And now, building on that, so that's the first thing, do the scale, think of the notes in a different name. But then also I think it would be useful to do some arpeggios, so we might just take, usefully, staying in the lower position so you really feel the movement of where we're going to be moving in the Brahms. C sharp major arpeggio would be a useful one to do, where I just slightly reached out to get my 4th finger on the C sharp and just stay there and come back down again. And equally, I think F sharp minor. So we start in a very similar way with a stretch. Would be useful. Did I put any other things useful? Yeah, I have one other useful thing on my list. It'll be surprising. It's actually D minor. And I think I was thinking more in terms of moving to a 4th finger here. And the reason, it's all to do with the harmonic progression that Brahms employs. And he quite a few times in this trio moves from F sharp minor, let's just take triads. And then what he does is absolutely beautiful. He is going to move the bottom F sharp down a semitone, keep the A, move the C sharp up a semitone, and now you've gone from F sharp minor to D minor. And then what he does is he goes down another semitone from F natural to E, down from the A to a G sharp, but keeps the D, and that way it changes to an E7 chord, and that is particularly relevant when we get to the coda part of the trio, because that's how he gets back home again. You know, otherwise it's a very long way to go to get back from F sharp minor to A minor. Now don't worry if you couldn't quite catch what those sequences were, I have written down the triad move from F sharp minor to D minor, and the triad move from the D minor to E7. Now you'll notice that they are not always in root. Okay, so the D minor is in first inversion. Okay, and it is really just showing it's a very common compositional trick, if you like, or tool, is just to be moving by a semitone. But if you keep just one of the notes the same, it feels like a really acceptable transition. So there's a few things, thinking outside the box, you know, other things that will help you understand better what's on the page. Don't just play the notes, you know, understand something about the harmony, even if you're not a pianist, you know, have a look at the score, maybe try out some of those notes or listen to your favourite recording. Now, moving to Feuillard, we've been looking at the complete study in different articulation solutions and different patterns. And yesterday we looked at the inverse to what's printed, which is more like a sort of Sansoncello concerto kind of configuration. Today we're going to look at the first variation that has been offered in the at the bottom of the page there, where you get the two lower notes and then the two upper. Now the method is going to be quite different here. This is actually going to be more like a sort of a spiccato stroke, and we can use two different parts of the arm. So we can use the forearm and get quite exhausted with it, or we can move to the wrist and be having a little bit of a laid back relaxation, if you like, believe it or not. And what might be an idea is to play one bar with the force of the forearm, and then the next bar a bit more loose with the wrist. Something like that. More on this sort of developed idea of an energetic use of the muscle followed by something more relaxed, so that you can keep going for long periods of time, can be found really usefully developed by Mats Lidström in his essential warm-up routine for cellists. It's a fantastic book, and I would guide you to chapter 7 of that, where he talks a great deal about that. He gives you plenty of explanation about how it works and what we are trying to do. And in his examples, he might have, say, 3 beats of you using the loud version and just 1 beat where you take the softer wrist version, which means you can sort of regroup, you can allow some oxygen back into those muscles. Take a breath if you find that you're finding it difficult to get to the end. So really that pretty much completes our viewpoint on one study, many different solutions in terms of the length, the stroke, and of course the pattern that we're applying to these basically block chords that are underlying there. And there's more that can be had, but hopefully that will ignite your interest to look a little further into it. Now, back to Brahms. So yesterday we managed to get to the end of the first section of the trio, and today we're going to complete the trio and look at the coda, and again trying to keep a bit of an eye on what's happening in the piano, both material wise and in terms of pulse and meter and in terms of harmony. Now not all of those things are all the time, some of this you can then understand from what we've already played. So that in fact the lead into the second section is very similar to the beginning, isn't it? Oh, you say yes, it's the same. Well, yes it is, and no it isn't. So the first thing you probably will notice is that in the second of those bars there's an F natural, whereas the first time round there was an E sharp. And you may be thinking, oh, well, why did you put an E sharp last time, and why not put an F natural, and how much easier it might have been for you to play it? Well, obviously it's to do with the underlying structure and what's going on, because the first time round that E sharp is underlying from a C sharp major added 7th harmony. Whereas when we get to it in the second bar of the second section, it's turned into a diminished 7th. And that's because he's employing that as a crossroads chord in order to go somewhere else. and he's going to be going through towards A major, using A7, going to D major, D minor, which we've discussed earlier, how and why that is getting quite close to our F sharp minor relationship. And he's sort of switching between these, you know, sort of A major, D minor, A major, C sharp major to F sharp minor. Now, don't worry if I'm rattling those off too quickly and thinking, oh, what is it, you know, but I'm just trying to encourage you, look at the score, understand why there's a change and why we also feel in the music, oh, it feels like it's going on a journey, because it is, basically. Now, before I just try out that little sample again, bowing, the standard Henle printed edition, and I think also with Bärenreiter, oh no, Bärenreiter makes a good correction. Okay, so the second bar, this would be bar, bar 91, the final two quavers should really be on a new stroke like they are in the first section of the trio. So we would have, sorry, here is the change. Now, of course, that little spot that we've just floated straight through, and it seems so straightforward for us, don't forget that's a hemiolar effect going canonically with the piano as before. And there are really some beautiful chords coming up there, an A7 chord in the left hand of the piano, D major, D minor, A major, and it sounds beautiful. So although you've got something repetitive, listen out for your pianist and really enjoy the colour of the harmonic changes there. We're coming down from it then, let me just see. Ooh, definite question mark has come in there. Absolutely beautiful writing. And at this point, this move up, it's a little bit of C sharp major. He adds in a seventh in the piano part there. And we also have the hint, of course, at the C sharp minor. It sounded very sad. And then there is just a tiny chink of daylight. There's a crotchet rest for both you and the pianist before they begin with yadadum, their little balalaika, diddle diddle, and you're going to catch in on that. Diddle dum. Now, in terms of the bowing of this next bit, this is the beautiful C sharp major arpeggio rise. Quite nice actually to do that in one bow stroke. I think it really lends itself if you can. But what you need to be aware of, and the reason why I was demonstrating with potentially separating the last two quavers, is because in the piano part, diddle-dum, diddle-dum, rest, diddle-dum, diddle-dum, so the second part of that, their phrase, overlaps with your last two quavers here, and it does need to feel really connected. So there may be a cause for thinking perhaps we'll put a separate bow in there, or make sure it's nice and strong, okay? Now, thinking about things being apparently the same, again, they're not. I mean, partly, if you didn't know what was going on in the piano part at all, you might just sort of think, oh, well, yes, I understand it's a bit boring to play something the same when it comes twice. That's fair enough. So we may have one that is louder than the other. And you might be thinking, well, which way round? And maybe if you're just sort of thinking, well, I expect perhaps it'd be the second one because we get louder because we're repeating ourselves and we're sort of making it quite clear that's what we intend. But I don't think that that is what is described by what's happening in the score. So in the score, the first time round, there are some clashing notes going on in the piano with these. So that we have against this, there's a G sharp going on in the piano, whereas the second time, so that was at bar 101, when it comes exactly the same notes in the cello again, the clash is gone, and it's just against an A. There is no clash. There's just resignation. And this is also borne out by the top of the phrase, because when we come to the top of the phrase at 103, A major falling down to a G sharp, seventh there, lovely. But in the piano, again, a clash because a D sharp is sitting in there. You know, there's tension and anxiety sitting in there. Whereas at 107, when we have the same notes again, there is no clash. It's just an A and an E. It's all very, very open, resigned, or perhaps solved. You know, there is no tension. It's gone. So in that respect, the harmony is kind of telling you what the difference is going to be. First time, I think, you know, we've got to the great depths of the instrument. Glancing through, it's the lowest we've been throughout the piece and the lowest we'll get. Okay. So there's something a little bit more calm and resolved when you come round to a second time, and I think, you know, it's absolutely in the writing, in the score. You may well just feel it like that when you play with a pianist or play with an accompaniment track and not necessarily understand why, and perhaps that will help. You know, you realise actually there are some harmonic tensions the first time round which makes you feel like you want to sort of swell up the emotion and come up with something from this depth to this height. And also really enjoy this chromaticism, which is absolutely the epitome of this movement, of this trio, isn't it? Where we begin right at the very start with exactly those notes, which are what? They are semitone ornamentation around the C sharp, which is the dominant to our key, you know, so all these things linked together. We're now just coming to the coda. Now, what is happening here in the piano? Do you know? You might have to go and have a look. It's not quite the same as pretty much everywhere else. I think you can pretty much consistently see, if you have a little look at this trio, glancing at the whole score, that all the time, pretty much, the right hand of the piano has got diddle-dum, diddle-dum, baddle-dum, baddle-dum, which is two semiquavers and a quaver on a single beat. You come to this coda, where we've already talked about starting to feel either a resignation or certainly a calmness and a solution that's been coming from 107, and it's borne out when we get into the second time bar, because that configuration turns into a triplet, da-dee-da-dee-da-da-dee-da-da, rather than da-da-da-da-da. The fret has gone, you know, the fretfulness has gone, and it's become much, much calmer. In the writing, it's just in that tiny little configuration, and it's beautiful, sort of against the duplets of the left hand of the piano. Sort of a lot more of a lazy feeling of unwinding, and that's what we're doing. We're gradually falling. You'd think we'd be ending on a nice finishing note, maybe. Even if you're expecting to go down these chromatics, are we expecting a crescendo? No, I don't think so. And that's what makes it so interesting, because you don't expect it. So we're diminuending all the way down the bottom here. Keep going quieter whilst you've got these long notes on your F natural. We start to build. Reserve some bow for the E. Because that minim E, at that point, the piano takes off in a beautiful triplet rise on an E7 chord, which is the dominant seventh to the Allegretto quasi Menuetto key of A minor. Okay, and it's absolutely gorgeous because he rises up with a sort of seventh. Something like that in the piano part. It goes up to the F natural, which is a lovely sort of flattened supertonic to an E7 chord, if you want some technicals on that. And of course it's just the... We're coming back to the beautiful theme of the Allegretto. It's just sublime. I was going to say beautiful, it is beautiful, but it's sublime. Very, very gorgeous. Tempo-wise, just thinking about, is there a change? I think we're trying to keep it the same pulse throughout. Let's just think. I think, yeah, it's something where you need to keep the flow going through the trio, but not be zooming through it, you know. Wouldn't be no good at all, because we haven't got time to take in all this harmonic beauty. And neither do you want to be too slow that we don't sort of feel that we can understand what's happening with some of these semitonal clashes in the two parts. So when you pick your tempo, you need to think, probably start with the trio, the feeling of the calmness of it. It'll flow happily because of this diddle-um baddle-um going on in the piano part. It'll already sound kind of pushed if you're not careful. And that pretty much wraps it up. What I'm hoping to do is to upload the performance with one of my two long-standing pianists. But I need to just wait on them being able to upload me their recording, so that then I can use that to make tomorrow's performance. So there's a possibility it might come out the day after. But hold in there, I will submit it, and hopefully include pretty much all the points that we've been looking at. Enjoy your explorations as ever. Bye.